Oh, good, you're here. Come on. This is the centre of performance. Whenever there's a top performance in New Zealand, it all comes from here. That's Lisa Carrington. She's been doing that for days. That's the boy who got the hole-in-one in Tokyo. Oh, he did it again. Hey, Finn, how's the performance going?
Top tier.
Nice. This is our Generate room. In here, you'll find our top performers helping Kiwis maximise their KiwiSaver investments. Get in here, Finn. Maximise.
Right,
Generate. Putting performance first.
Simon Gault, welcome to my podcast, and thank you for the book.
Tom, it's pretty awesome to be here.
Is it you? You came in before and you said something like, "I know what your game plan is," or something.
Yeah, well, I know you make everybody cry. I've been listening to your podcast, mate. Come on.
Are you? I don't make everyone cry. Are you an emotional guy in this stage of life?
Well, I'm not telling you that until the end. You'll find out.
It's great to have you here today. Have we met before? I don't know if we've met before.
I don't know, but I've obviously seen you and listened to your podcast. When you get invited on, you think you better do a bit of research on the guy who's going to dive into you. So yeah, I think I know a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. How does the phrase celebrity chef sit with you?
No, I don't really like it. I mean, it gets used, but there's no way around it. But no, I'm not a big fan of it. What does it mean? Just you lucked out and got on TV, and some people don't never want to be on TV, right? But I got asked and ended up doing it, and here I am.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I suppose when people hear the name Simon Gault, the reaction will be, "Oh, the MasterChef guy," or "Oh, the Briscoes guy."
Yeah.
But it's like both those things are very, very small strands of your entire career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, MasterChef, I was a judge on there for 5 years, but out of that came other TV programs. I did Chef on a Mission and Descent from Disaster, a documentary, and it opened up some amazing doors, and then into documentaries on health. Where I was, as it turned, I thought I was going to be the host, but it turned out I was the guinea pig. But, so then, you end up on TV, and then you go somewhere like, it's been on BBC Asia or Amazon, and people go, "Oh, you're that guy that,"
You're the celebrity chef.
Yeah.
So what does day-to-day life look like for you these days? You're not in the day-to-day running of restaurants, are you?
No, got out of that.
Sort of normal hours?
Yeah, within reason. I mean, I still do cooking classes. I've got a deli in St John's and then a smaller one out in Takanini in Auckland. So it's kind of like walking into a really cool kitchen that's a shop. So through my restaurants years ago, I lived in Italy, came back to New Zealand, couldn't find these things that I wanted, and started bringing them in. You soon realise you can't just bring one wheel of cheese, or you got to bring a bunch. So by default, I ended up in that business. So now I'm doing cooking classes in there for those that want to do it. Corporates, you get the CEO hand stretching a pizza with his forklift driver, or just people, public, who want to come and learn how to cook Sri Lankan or master how to cook a steak, and that's my game. So it's kind of my restaurant fix, because I miss the restaurants. I've lived and breathed them all my life since I left school, and I do miss that. It's good fun, but the deli is that sort of, it's like I only do 10 people. So it's like 10 people coming for dinner. They can bring their own wine. I cook. They come around and get in if they feel like getting their hands dirty. And it's really good. And then I'm trying to do all of these things as quickly as possible, like you are in a restaurant. You're sort of conducting an orchestra with all these meals going out. So it's full on and it's great fun, and that's my restaurant fix.
Shit, you love the theatre of it, don't you?
I do.
You love the drama of it.
It's like, I remember when I first thought, I want to work in a restaurant. I want to own a restaurant. It's when I was in a restaurant as a young kid and I saw the head chef, and it was kind of like he was conducting this orchestra that culminated in these amazing plates of food. And I'm like, that's a bit of me. You've got a team around you that all work together in harmony, and you've got to be that guy conducting that orchestra. And I do like that. I love it. And I love, the service. They say the service time in a restaurant is where it all happens. Your early bookings are late, your late bookings are early. Everybody wants to eat at once, and it's all go. And it's just great fun. Yeah.
What do you miss most and least about the day-to-day of running a restaurant?
Well, probably the hours. I mean, I'm a single dad, so I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and, that restaurants and being a dad's pretty hard work. I mean, I literally used to, back in the day, I'd get my daughter off to preschool, race into work, do lunch service, come home, pick her up, get dinner organised, tuck her into bed, pay a nanny, go back to work. And one night I was driving home, and I live out South Auckland on a lifestyle property. I'm driving home, and yet again, roadworks, motorway detour, an extra 20 minutes, and next morning I drove into work and I said to my business partner, "Merry Christmas, here's half a restaurant." And it's the best thing I ever did. Because I want to be remembered as a dad. I'm an older dad. I didn't have my daughter until I was a bit older than most.
49, 50?
Yep.
Did you think that ship had sailed for you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. And then when she popped out, it was like somebody just reached out, flicked the switch, and everything was different for me. Like now looking after her was the service that I loved in a restaurant. There was something better, This beautiful little girl who became, my world. And, do I want to be remembered as that guy that was always at work at night? I want her to remember me as a dad, not that chef guy.
I think one of the perks about being a dad during middle age is you have a greater appreciation of time and how limited it is and how it's not renewable. So you realise that these moments that you lose with Hazel, that's her name, mate.
Yeah.
You're not going to get them back.
No,
so it sort of crystallises just how important that
time is.
They're
not coming back. And, even she's just turned 12 and you can see the changes. And I go, I used to get big hugs and all of those things, and they're sort of, it's not so cool now, dropping off at school. You don't give Dad a kiss goodbye, it's like somebody might see.
Yeah, I got some photos of her here. I'm guessing this is the cuddle phase?
It is, yeah, you do have some photos. Well done.
Yeah. So, it must be quite sad as a dad when it gets to that stage where, you're no longer their, hero or their everything.
Yeah, although this weekend that's just gone by, she said to me, "Dad, I'd like to learn how to fly a glider," because I fly gliders and aeroplanes. Well, that was like music to my ears, because I don't want to be that dad who's going, "Come on, let's go, and I'll take you gliding, or I'll take you flying in an aeroplane, tip you upside down." And when she turns around and says to me, "I'd like to have a go at that," I mean, that put a smile on my face. I mean, 12 years old, and she's going, "Can I learn how to fly a glider?" And I'm like, hell yeah, What an achievement that would be, slowly to catch that monkey, and when she's old enough to be able to fly solo on her own. So the fact that she's interested in something that I love might be, we'll see how we go, right?
Yeah. So your love of flying, that's something you got from your dad.
Yeah.
And I know you had a particularly close relationship with him. I've seen some Facebook posts, and you just wrote some wonderful posts when he passed last year. How are you the same, and how are you different as a parent to your dad?
Well, my dad's dad died when he was 7 years old, so I believe I had an awesome dad. I mean, he spent a lot of time with me growing up. He was an airline pilot, originally an Air Force pilot, but later became an airline pilot. So, and did the long distance to, the States and all over the place. So he was away a lot of the time. But when he came back, he sure as hell made up for it. If I'd been a dad when I was younger, I think I would have been pretty hopeless at it. But given it happened to me at a bit older, I'm going all out to do a good job.
Well, why would you have been hopeless at it? Just too selfish?
Too busy. I lived in the restaurants. So my world was restaurants. I just loved them. So I was there all day, every day. And, I loved it. And, I don't think I would have been very good at it.
Yeah, so if we go back to the beginning, so young Simon Gault, it was like a career pathroads. It was either going to be cooking or flying. Why did cooking win out?
I remember talking to my dad about it, and he said, if you go down the flying route, you're always going to be subject to needing a medical. But if you do what you love most as a hobby and maybe second most as a career, you can do both. So I really did love cooking more. And I loved the idea of being a pilot, but sitting on a flight deck for 12 hours doing nothing didn't really appeal to me. It was just a takeoff and landing bit, and I like going upside down. So I thought, I'm gonna fly as a hobby and get into cooking as a career. I'd probably be somewhat better off if I'd gone the flying track. But
oh, really? Financially speaking? Really?
I think probably, yeah. Chefs don't get paid a lot of money. That's why you've really got to own your own place and then really dig deep into it and work out how you can make money out of it. It's not an easy industry to make money, that's for sure.
Well, that's an astonishing thing to hear, because in terms of New Zealand, like you don't get much bigger than Simon Gault in terms of name recognition, I don't think, in that industry.
I mean, I've done okay, but it was the fact that we needed to have a bunch of restaurants to get economy of scale. Which is, the restaurants I love most were, my first restaurant and probably my second restaurant where that only had one restaurant. But in the end, we had 9 that I was looking after. So, you touch a lot of people, but you don't really, you're sort of putting out fires all the time. We were in Queenstown, Wellington, Taupo and Auckland. So I was travelling a lot. And you're just going in to sort of put the fires out and rescue things and not cooking as much. So I loved it, and it served me well. But, I was very lucky. I had my first restaurant when I was 22, but now to buy a restaurant for these young people, it's a hell of a lot harder. It's, borrowing money's harder. The cost to fit out a restaurant's just massive now.
Yeah. I was quite shocked when I found that out. So you started at 16 with Tony Astle at his legendary Parnell restaurant, Antoine's. I actually had Tony on the podcast about a year ago, towards the end of last year.
He's the godfather.
Yeah. How was that? Did he throw anything at you? Did he make you bleed or cry? He talked himself up as a bad man in the kitchen.
Yeah, he's pretty tough. I think it would be fair to say he makes Gordon Ramsay look like a pussy. I remember I went for an interview there, and all he wanted to know is who my parents voted for. And so once I got that out of the way, and I clearly had the right answer, I was offered an apprenticeship with Tony. And I'll never forget the first day I turned up, he said, well, you really got to be good at washing dishes, so I'm sending you down the road to Louis' Bar, which was down the bottom of Parnell Road above the Exchange Tavern. And when I hear after 6 weeks that you're the best kitchen hand in the world, you can come back. So that was a bit of a letdown, because I thought I was going to be cooking and conducting the orchestra on day one, but no, off to wash dishes. And in actual fact, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because they are the most important person in a kitchen. And if you can't do a good job of that and be prepared to jump in and help, then it's pretty hard to have that orchestra firing on all cylinders. So I did that, and then finally it came time that I was allowed into the kitchen. One of the chefs said to me, now when Tony comes in, you say, good morning, chef. I'm like, yep, I can manage that. So eventually Tony turned up, and I'm been set this task, and it was actually cutting some fish up for something. And he walks in, and I say, good morning, chef, all excited. It's my first day. And he comes up, and he gets about that far away from me, and that's about an inch, and says, what's so fucking good about it? Well, that absolute, you can imagine, I'm 16 years old, I'm just out of school, that just terrified me. I'd been totally set up. He didn't like being called chef at all. He was Tony or Louis, and he was a hard taskmaster, but he was a perfectionist, and it was really a privilege to work for him. There were times that there were tears. I remember one day I cut a piece of eye-fillet for a steak tartare dish, and I was in the back kitchen where we did the duck and the soufflés and the vegetables and passed things through to the front kitchen where Tony was. And I cut this piece of eye-fillet, put it on this little silver tray, and I passed it through to the front kitchen thinking, job done. Well done, Simon. The next thing you know, out of the corner of my eye, I realised that this thing was airborne and it was heading my direction. Well, I took about 3 steps back and caught it underarm, good cricketing skills. And next thing I know, he's coming around from the front kitchen, round to the back kitchen, grabs it off me and throws it at me again. I definitely didn't catch it on the second attempt. The moral of the story is don't cut the steak the wrong size. He was just a perfectionist in every angle. But, you know, he was like Dad. And his wife, Beth, ex-hairdresser, she was mum. She used to cut all our hair. She'd pick the bits up at the end of the night after we'd been yelled at, screamed at or told off and bring us all back together. You know, Christmas Day we were always open for lunch, but we all stayed behind and there were presents and, you know, it was an incredible family environment and he was an incredible mentor and to this day a great friend. So I'm so grateful for that start because I was working in the best place in town. You know?
Yeah, we had it was a wonderful podcast actually. He's a tough nut to crack, but I think we got there towards the end when he was talking about the passing of his wife Beth and how he still sometimes wanders around the house and talks to photos of her. It was really sad.
Yeah, so she was a beautiful lady. Yes, beautiful.
She passed away and then he shut the restaurant like shortly after that.
Yeah,
and that restaurant was sort of like their child. It was his life, eh?
Yep, he'd be there all day, every day. I mean, I worked there for 3 years and I could count on one hand the services that Tony wasn't there. And Beth was in there every morning cleaning the restaurant, doing the flowers, going home, coming back in the evening, sitting down at the table with a glass of port at the end of the night, doing the cash up, and we'd go and sit with her. I mean, just incredible people and the opportunities that came out of that. You know, I remember one day Tony came out to the kitchen and we're just cleaning up, and when Elton John was in town, he dined there pretty much every night. And he said, do you want to come and meet Elton John? And the next thing you know, I'm sitting next to Elton John in the restaurant chatting to him about gliding. He was really interested in gliding. And, you know, the next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. And then that week I went to the concert and I'm telling all my mates, I was sitting having a drink with Elton John the other night. And they're like, yeah, right. But, you know, it really was. And, you know, Tony was very good at all sorts of things. Like, Simon, what are you doing with your money? You know, all your friends are out on the weekends, but you have to work every night, so you're saving your money. Give it to me. I'll invest it for you. So he invested Briley shares for me. He bought Taylor's 77 port. By the time I finished my apprenticeship, I had a bunch of Briley shares and it was all this Taylor's 77 port. And let me tell you, that was a good investment. I mean, I think I used to pay about $37 a bottle for this Taylor's 77 port, the best port of the century. And when I opened my first restaurant, I was selling it in a little glass for $25 a glass. So it was and be worth a little bit more now. I've got about 2 bottles left, I think.
Wow. Yeah, that sort of style, the Tony Astle style, I feel like you couldn't get away with it now in 2025. It would be called bullying or workplace harassment or something. But did you take that into your chefing style? Like, were you tough on your staff?
I remember always thinking, I'll never be like that. I'll always be the nice guy. Well, when you first open your first restaurant and there's no money and you're working every hour under the sun, you run out of patience to go over and listen, dear, that's not how you do it. You don't have time. You're in the middle of service. It's all rock and roll. So, yeah, I probably picked up a few of Tony's traits.
You got to do what you got to do, I guess. We'll jump around a bit here, but this was, I believe, when you were in Euro, which was a fine dining restaurant on Auckland's harbour. If a customer complained about a meal, you'd get the chef from the kitchen and bring them over to the table and make them apologise?
Well, they've got to learn, right? You know, it's one team, one dream. But we've got to own a mistake. You know, like if we stuff up, you've got to own it and try and fix it. Because once they walk out the door and they tell all their mates how bad it was, if it was bad, you have that opportunity. If they declare this issue in the restaurant, go out. And I'll tell you what, if a chef comes out and says, I'm the one who made it, I'm really sorry about that, what can we do to fix this? And hopefully they've already got a solution. They walk out the door and tell that story. And that's a hell of a lot better story than the steak was overcooked or whatever it was, right?
That's smart. So owning your own restaurant at 22, were you able to do that with the money that you made through the investments that you talked about before?
Yeah, so when I finished my apprenticeship, I went to England to work and started in London and then moved out of London. I worked at a restaurant called Leith's, which was, top restaurant in London at the time, and then went and did a head chef's job when I should never have done it. I remember in the interview they said to me, have you catered any weddings? And I said, yep. I've never been to a wedding, let alone cater one. Had I done buffets? Yep. Well, we'd done a buffet at Tech when I went to Tech, but I'd never really done a buffet, and I bluffed my way into this job and I got the job. Anyway, and then I worked in a castle, Thornbury Castle, which was incredible. But what you did back then is you bought a car back to New Zealand if you had some money. So fortunately the Briley shares, thanks to Tony Astle, had gone up, and I had enough money to bring a Porsche 911 back to New Zealand, thinking I was pretty cool, by the way. And that was sold, and that got me the money to get into the restaurant with a bit of help from my mum and dad.
It's an absurd thought now, like from the position of where you are now in the stage in life, like a man in his early 60s, like a 22-year-old opening a restaurant. It's crazy, right? Yeah. It's unthinkable.
I probably, in hindsight, should have worked in more places, so I had to sort of do a lot of self-learning after that, because I'd only really worked in 4 restaurants. And there was a lot of learning along the way. I used to go, and whenever I could get away, I would go to the Culinary Institute of America and do week courses or go and work in other restaurants around the world to keep learning. But once you've got a restaurant, you're in, and that's where your head's got to be.
Was that a success?
It was a good restaurant. It was a little old house built in 1851 out in the Howick Colonial Village. It had a gravel road to it, but it was a cool restaurant, and it took a while to get noticed. It was a real struggle to start off with, and then somebody said I should start entering cooking competitions, and that would help me get my name out there. So I did that, and fortunately I managed to win them, the competitions, and suddenly we started to get a bit of a name for ourselves, and then people came out and some really cool, interesting customers who were great at spreading the word, and then we became sort of the hottest. It was back in the day of fine dining restaurants. We were a fine dining restaurant, and it was a good success.
So that was like 39, 40 years ago. When you look back and think about that version of Simon Gault, how are you the same and how are you different to that kid?
I don't think I've changed. I'm not scared of taking a risk, but now I'm somewhat more nervous because I don't have
Your time's limited.
Time is limited, and
we're in the back half.
Yeah, I don't need to lose anymore. I've done my fair share of losing over the years with different things I punted on and have not worked.
You've mentioned some of the overseas experiences you've had. I've got a card here called Bits and Pieces, which sort of focuses on this. These are just some random sort of things. So you worked as a private chef for one of the world's wealthiest people. Can you talk about that, or is that an NDA scenario?
I can talk about it to a certain extent.
Who was it? Can you say who it was or no?
Yeah.
He's the second wealthiest person in the world at the time.
He was, yeah. And when I first... I wanted to work on a super yacht, so I applied to an agency in Fort Lauderdale, and before you knew it, I was doing a phone interview with the chief stewardess from this big boat, and a lot of questions, and this went on for a couple of weeks until finally I'd submitted some sample menus and things, and they said, we're down to the final 7 chefs, we'd like you to fly to San Francisco and cook a lunch and a dinner for the owner. I still had no idea who the person was, so I thought, why not? Got to go and do that. They actually said to me, you'll need to pay for your own ticket, but we'll refund you when you get there. And I thought, what have I got to lose? Let's go and do it. So I went and did it, and I was given a list of all the foods that he'd definitely didn't like. And I thought, wow, these other 6 chefs, what are they going to do? I thought, they'll probably use truffles this and foie gras that, and, they'll try and show off with all the expensive stuff. So I looked at his list and thought, he doesn't like broccoli. I can make a really good broccoli pesto and all these different things. So I decided to go completely at the other angle and use some of the things he didn't like, keep it quite Kiwi and not super, super flash. I knew he loved Japanese food, so that was part of the brief. And I fortunately had employed a Japanese chef in my restaurant, Gault's on Quay down on the viaduct, for me to learn about cooking Japanese food. She did all the staff meals, so I had a bit of a clue about Japanese food. So I did this lunch and dinner, and anyway, I got the job. And it turned out to be a guy called Larry Ellison from Oracle.
Oh, wow.
And Larry, you didn't know about Larry in New Zealand at that time. And anyway, I came back to New Zealand and I rang a friend of mine, Robbie Naismith, who had sailed for, the Sydney Hobart with Larry. And I said, what's this guy like? And he says, he's a great guy, just don't cook him a bad meal, And he said, just treat him like one of the boys. And so I went back, and I remember the first day I went back, and the captain picked me up from the airport and said, right, well, you better get shopping because he's hopping on with a journalist tonight. We're doing a bay cruise, picking him up from the San Francisco Yacht Club, bay cruise. He wants like a 6-course dinner, and then 11 o'clock she's hopping off, the family's hopping on, and we're going sailing for 3 days. And by the way, you're cooking for all the crew as well. So it was just me in this tiny galley. And I cooked got busy in a big hurry, and at the end of the evening, the chief stewardess said, Larry would like to meet you properly. And I thought, this has been interesting. She said he doesn't normally ask for the chef to go out. I'm like, okay. So anyway, I get out there, and he said, how are you? And I remember exactly what I said. I said, well, I'm fucked. I've just flown halfway around the world and cooked your dinner. And I could see the look on the chief stewardess like, that's it, you're done. That was the shortest job in history. Anyway, Larry says, pull up a seat. And within 5 minutes, we're talking about airplanes, because he loves flying airplanes. There's a whole bunch of airplanes. I could talk to you all day about that, but it was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. It was incredible.
What year was this? I feel like he's a big deal now. Like he's on the phone each week to Russell Kurtz with Sail GP stuff. But I feel like in New Zealand, we sort of first became aware of Larry Ellison and Oracle during the America's Cup.
Yeah, so it was about 2001, but he wasn't in the America's Cup at that stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is he a good dude? You had much to do with him?
Awesome guy. Yeah, you got to see him, because I ended up cooking at his house and on the boat. So that was a pretty cool gig. It was amazing. I remember one day I'm cooking at the house, and he comes into the kitchen halfway through lunch and says, you're going flying this afternoon. I'm like, who's cooking your dinner? He said, we'll worry about that later. And so I turn up out at the airport, and the pilot's there, and he opens the hangar doors, and I was in my chef's jacket, and you could see me, oh God, I've got to take the cook for a fly. And this is quite funny, really. So he opens up, and there's all these cool airplanes in there, and he says, what do you want to go for a fly in? And there was a jet fighter, there was a Pit Special, there was a Pilatus PC-7, which is a turbine rocket ship that military air forces around the world used to train their pilots. And I said, I've flown, I used to own a Pit Special because I'd had one previously. And I said, but I'd like to go in that. You could see him sort of, okay, well, you fly. If you can fly a Pit Special, then you must be reasonable, because that's a high-performance aerobatic aeroplane. So he briefed me on, getting rid of the canopy, and said, you can sit in the front. And anyway, we go for a fly. And he talks to me about it all. I'd never flown a turbine aeroplane before, so this thing was a rocket ship. Anyway, I'm sitting in the front and take off, have to stay low because it's very close to San Francisco Airport, fly out to this place called Half Moon Bay to do some aerobatics, because obviously I'm an aerobatic pilot, having owned a Pit Special. And he said, show me some aerobatics. So I was just sort of getting a feel for it, flying it around, and this guy in the back was getting a little impatient. And he said, do you want me to do some aerobatics? And I'm like, okay. So anyway, I thought, bugger you. So I pointed the thing at the ground, got some speed up, pulled up vertically, did a vertical roll on the way up, stall turn over the top. He never told me you're not supposed to do stall turns in a turbine. And then a vertical roll on the way down. And all I can hear from the back seat is, fuck! We became very good friends. Larry comes into the kitchen that evening, big smile on his face, saying, I hear you're quite good at aerobatics. And he said, you can have an hour a week in it. Go fly it an hour a week. And that was great. That was like, multi-million-dollar airplane that I was having a play in with courtesy of Larry. He's an amazing guy. I mean, he loved food. The only thing that he ever decided what he was having was breakfast. Real foodie, loved Japanese food. I really enjoyed it. We'd go to somewhere like Alaska or, all these crazy places, Mexico. And so the first thing I'd do is get into a hotel and try and learn the local cuisine and overnight, which is pretty hard to do. Then Larry would turn up and I'd do my version of it. So, yeah, awesome guy to work for. You probably only ever cook him one bad meal, I guess. He's a hard taskmaster. You hear about him with the sailing and things. He doesn't like losing. He likes winning. And I remember one day we were in Bora Bora and it was going to be a challenge between the guests and the crew with these outrigger races. And, this young crew of all these fat guys except for the chef, right? Super fit guys. I thought, well, cream Larry and his old boys. Well, not with Larry, mate. He had it all worked out. They creamed us, Larry and his old mates just nailed us.
So, yeah, he's in his 70s now. He still looks amazing, though, eh?
Yeah.
He's incredible. When you've got opportunities to do things like that, why would you want to bother, owning your own business? Owning your own thing, your own restaurant?
Well, your life's on hold when you're, floating around on a boat and one day you're on the boat, the next day you're at his house.
That's terrible. It's terrible.
It's cool at the time. I mean, it's amazing, but it's, it's full on hard work. There's very little time off. I loved it, but your life's on hold, and I wanted to get back and get my own restaurant again.
So I've got a bunch of names here. According to the internet, these are celebrities you've cooked for. So we'll get these names out there and we'll see if there's a story behind them or not. Bill Clinton.
I don't know if I can tell. Can I tell?
Oh, enough time's passed.
Bill Clinton was coming to the boat and we were supposed to be, he was going to be on board. And got a list of all the things that he liked as well, so I was definitely not going to do what he didn't like. Anyway, he never turned up. It didn't turn up. So that's as short as that story goes.
Well, there was a dead end. Okay, MJ, Michael Jackson.
No, haven't cooked for Michael Jackson.
Bono,
not that I can recall, no.
Tiger Woods.
No.
Tom Cruise.
No.
Really?
No, sorry.
Oh, the internet's got this very wrong.
Really? Have you been using ChatGPT?
You may have been ChatGPT. I try numerous sources. You never know what you're going to get. Is there any names that you can drop?
Oh, there's loads of names. I can't even really remember.
You told before from Antoine was a great story.
Elton John's pretty cool. I worked for Simon Fuller. Well, didn't work for him. I had sold my restaurant on the Viaduct when we won the America's Cup and was asked to cook on a super yacht in the Bay of Islands for 5 days. And this guy got on, didn't know who he was, and then somebody said to me, he manages the Spice Girls. And anyway, he was the same age as me, and we got on really well that did this 5 days cooking. And then he said, I'm having a tax year out from the UK. Do you want to come and have a holiday in the UK and Italy? He was going to Italy for a year, where I like to go and have a holiday. And I was like, yep, that was pretty quick. So I went over there. So that was a pretty cool experience, He managed the Spice Girls, Annie Lennox, Steve McManaman, the famous soccer player, Liverpool soccer player. So that opened some doors. And, Simon Fuller, just the greatest guy ever. You sort of hear of all these pop idols and things and managers. You hear about drugs. Simon couldn't be further from that. This absolute gentleman. You never see him in the media. That's probably why ChatGPT hasn't linked me to him. But that was an incredible year where, there was a chef in every villa that we stayed at. for the year, who I would just learn from and go shopping with and point at things because my Italian was no good, and come home, watch them cook it, and that was just an incredible year. And there were some pretty cool people that came and stayed with us through that year, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, like well-known people.
What's your next question? I'm not a name dropper. I thought I did pretty good with Elton John.
Yeah. And the Larry Ellison stuff was good. What is it just, is it like an unspoken code that you just don't talk about these things, or? Well,
also I've forgotten. I mean, we had the guy who was Captain Kirk into my last restaurant.
Oh, William Shatner.
Yeah, William Shatner. I just forget their names, We've had lots of people over the years, when we're at Antoine's, there was royalty that came in. I'll never forget doing Sir Michael Fay's wedding on Mercury Island with Tony Astle.
Wow.
He did his wedding at his home, but we did a big birthday party for him over there, and it was like a whole MASH theme. Just like on MASH, the TV program. So, I've been very lucky over the years to cook for some amazing people. But for me, everybody's amazing that comes in. My job is to put a smile on their face, put my heart on a plate and let them dissect it. And hopefully they walk out going, that was pretty bloody awesome.
I suppose on the other end of that spectrum, an amazing experience, but nothing glamorous about it at all. I think this was just for a TV show. You spent time on like a gas rig, Maui, which is like
Maui gas platform,
56 k's off the coast of Taranaki. What's that like?
Well, the most terrifying thing was doing the training in the helicopter in the pool for it. If you went down in the helicopter going out, you have to do all these things before they'll let you on the gas platform. I've never had anxiety like it in my life. And if I think back, I'd built myself up to this massive terror about being strapped into this helicopter that went into the water, then was tipped upside down, and you had to escape. You had to stay in the seat for X amount of seconds and escape. So that was bloody terrifying at the time, but when I look back on it, I thought, what was I so bloody worried about, And then we went out to the gas platform. It was for a TV series called Chef on a Mission, so I was fantastic on Bendigo High Country Sheep Station on one of the episodes. I was the last person to interview Shrek, the sheep.
Oh, the sheep.
Yeah, before he passed away. But, that was exciting out on the Maui gas platform because I had to cook for all these guys. And they didn't think much of a celebrity chef, let me tell you. They're hard asses, these boys that work out on these gas platforms. So it was no big deal that a celebrity chef had come along. That's why I hate that word, celebrity chef. So they were a tough audience. So I had to get out there and do things on the gas platform. The weather was atrocious. And we were down there and I was doing this welding underneath the gas platform and assisted with painting on deck, and then had to get into the kitchen and cook. And they had an assistant for me. Well, he got so sick. He was next to useless. He didn't even come out of his room. So, and we went out. Another one I did was out on Tally's fishing trawler, same sort of audience, tough to please. Did a girls' boarding school, they were easier to please. Went to police college, did all the things you do at police college. Had to do the swimming in the pool, swim down, get the brick and get in and fight with the batons and go out on patrol in a police car. I remember the guy on the first night, he said to me, it's a Tuesday night, it'd be pretty quiet. With the minutes we had the siren going, we're off to Poirua. This guy wanted to kill us with a golf club he had at the garage. He was on drugs, and that was a fun thing to do.
You've lived so many lives, eh?
Yeah, I've been lucky.
You've done a lot.
Yeah, I have been lucky with.
So Euro on Auckland's waterfront, very, very successful restaurant. So what's the story with that? So a good mate of mine, Leo Malloy, it's his restaurant.
Leo's restaurant, yeah.
So he opens it and he hires you as the chef.
Yes.
It's important. He pumped a lot of money into it, like over $1 million bucks at the time, which was a huge amount. So you need a good chef. Was that the first time you met him?
That was the first time I met him.
Yeah.
Yes, he asked me if I'd like to go and open this restaurant with him and, do a year's contract.
What did you know about him?
Not much at all. Nothing at all. And I didn't want to do the job. I'd sort of had a restaurant down in the viaduct and I was like, no, I'm not really interested. I kind of thought it was like reheating a souffle. I'd been there and done the waterfront, and he kept pestering me and finally invited me to a lunch. And I turned up to this lunch and it's just Leo and all these hot birds. And I'm like, okay, this is not too bad. He seemed quite a character. And I never forget, because I'd only recently come back from being overseas, and I'm sitting next to this girl and I said, what do you do? And she said, it was April Hiramia. And it was the dumbest thing to say because she was famous.
She's a sports presenter, former netballer.
Yeah, like somewhat more famous than I'd ever be. And so that was all a bit of humour. But anyway, he kept offering more and more until finally I said, yes, this is too good to be true, really. And the thing that really appealed to me is that he said, look, let's do all this wood cooking. So I went off to Texas to find the best wood grilling, cooking rotisseries that you could. And that was pretty exciting. And the toilets at Euro were the big talk of the town. Leo has a great vision. He's very good. He's crazy as well. He's absolutely
bonkers.
nuts. Yeah, he's bonkers. But he is a very clever guy. High respect for him. And, he could dial it down sometimes, but I enjoyed my year there with Leo. It was good.
We've been mates for over 3 decades. I got to know him just in Palmerston North when he just opened his first place, the Fat Lady's Arms.
Yeah.
And we've been friends ever since then. He's one of those friends, I often have to justify my relationship with him to people.
Yeah.
But he's one of the most loyal people you could ever meet.
He is, and a lot of people say to me, what was he like to work for? And I remember early on, we were just about to open, and he threw his toys out of the cot big time, and I said, well, go find another chef. And I started walking off down the wharf, and Leo will hate hearing this story if he listens to this, but he came running after me, and I never had a problem with Leo from that day onwards. The benchmark was set, and I loved what I did for Leo. And, he is creative. He gave me a Donna Hay book and said, this is the sort of food I want. I'm like, okay, I could, he's the guy paying the bills, right? And, after years, I ended up being a shareholder in Euro. And after Leo sold it, and, that's a whole nother story, and was involved with Euro for years.
Yeah, according to the internet, turnover at Euro was like $6 to $7 million a year at its peak.
Yep.
Would that be right?
Yeah, that'd be right.
Shit, that's a lot of money for food and drink, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a successful restaurant.
Wow.
It was busy. I remember, what's the cup, the racing cup, Melbourne Cup, that was just a huge day. The revenue on that day just was nuts. I hated Melbourne Cup because it was just full on, and it was everybody showing off to everybody, and they weren't really there for the food,
And you're at Euro, did that overlap with MasterChef? Were you the MasterChef guy when you were still at Euro?
Yes, I was still involved with Euro. So we had a bunch of restaurants then. And, I was asked to do MasterChef. In fact, they asked me to audition for it, but I was going overseas to do a guest chef spot in a hotel in Asia. And I couldn't do the interview, and I came back, and then they rang me and said, they'd been in and filmed something before that, and it never went anywhere. So they had some footage, and they watched that, and that was my audition to become a judge on MasterChef. And I'd never heard of MasterChef. I didn't know what it was or anything about it. And that was my first TV gig, apart from Good Morning Television, which didn't start very well, actually. I had a bit of a disaster on that. They asked me to go and cook on. Do you want to hear this story?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody likes it.
I love a disaster.
Yeah. I was asked to go and cook on Good Morning Television. You had to fly to Wellington and take your food, and they'd have all the pots and pans in a kitchen there. So off I go, turn up with my polystyrene box. Never been on TV before in my life. and it's live. So you do one segment and then everything cooks and then they come back and you finish it off in the second segment. And I was doing a whole roast chicken dish. And they had this pot there and I was sealing the whole chicken because I wanted to get a little bit of caramelisation, Maillard effect on the outside of this bird before I cooked it. And I'm sautéing it around in this pan and I'm listening to this. It wasn't a pan, it was sort of a shallow pot. And suddenly I realised it was making all these noises, and I realised that this is one of these ones that you don't actually put on a gas hob. It's just for going in the oven, and it was creaking. I thought, my worst nightmare's about to happen. This is going to crack or something. So I quickly reached down, grabbed another pot, put the other pot up there, picked this pot with the whole chicken in with both hands, lifted it up, tipped it upside down. The chicken fell into the pot and the new pot, and this bad pot just exploded and went absolutely everywhere, and it's live TV. So I just carried on as if it was all intentional, nothing had happened. And as soon as we went to the break, the producer came downstairs and said, "That was gold television, gold television. Do you want to come back next week?" That's how I got into doing Good Morning TV, through a complete stuff up.
Oh, that's it. Well, I suppose live TV, what happens? Is it online anywhere? Is it still on YouTube? Or?
Oh, I've got no idea. It should be, right? It's a good blooper moment.
Yeah, so then MasterChef came along, and you were a judge for the first 5 seasons, and that time helping create the careers of Nadia Lim and Chelsea Winter, who are both phenomenally successful.
Yeah, it was a cool experience. It was a lot of cold food to eat. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect, really. Just sort of, turned up for the first day and sort of got briefed, and away we went, and it seemed to go pretty well the first season, and they asked me back for the second season, and so it went on for 5 years. And I really enjoy it. I love what it did for kids in New Zealand. The number of kids when you'd go out and they got inspired about food, and I think, that we need that. We need Kiwis cooking. We don't do enough cooking. We're very good at buying jars and packets and things that are just full of E-numbers and preservatives and rubbish in them. But we actually want to do some cooking. You get young kids, I never forget, out of MasterChef, lots of other things happen for me. Suddenly the speaking circuit opened up, or I was cooking in Wellington at a Westfield shopping centre, and I used to challenge people out of the audience to come and make an omelette against me. And the idea was that they would normally win, right? And it would be fun. And I'll never forget, this one kid comes up, and he was probably 13 years old, and he cooked an omelette against me and won. So I gave him a cake mixer as the prize. So he and his mum went off with his box that was almost as big as him. I was back there a couple of years later, and he came up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Oh, not really, but remind me." And he opened this book up, and in this book he had a photo of everything he'd cooked using this cake mix and written a recipe. And his mum said to me that, "We've brought him here today because you're his hero. His dad died, and you're his hero." And to cut a long story short, all these years later, I've sort of become like a dad for him. He ended up working in one of my restaurants. He went off the rails. We sort of talked about it, and we stay in touch all the time. And in fact, he's now living in Sydney. I was over in Sydney. I took him out for dinner. And if that's what MasterChef brings along, that's been so rewarding for me. And I get, on Father's Day, he sends me these texts that make you cry. It's just amazing. And now he's in his late 20s, and got this great girl, and he's going places. And not cooking either, by the way. He's not cooking, but he did that for a period of time. But
what do you think was special about him? What was the link that meant you kept in touch? Because there's people in your life that you have some sort of contact with, and often you just sort of drift apart. Why is this one different?
I think in restaurants you do end up mentoring people a lot more because you need somebody good. So you want to help them get as good as possible, and you want them to take over at some stage, so you don't have to be there. So you're always looking for that person who's got that extra 5% magic, that little spark. And he just had that. I remember when I got out of all the restaurants with this group called the Nourish Group, and we had a restaurant in Wellington called Pravda, and we were doing a big finale dinner down there because it was my last time. And I made James, this young fellow, the head chef on the night. You know, when you see good in somebody, you know, I've got a lot of chefs that have worked for me that are now, you know, top chefs, you know. One of the head chef at Paris Butter used to work for me. Michael Meredith used to work for me years ago. You know, they've way surpassed me. But, you know, you help them on their journey, whatever it is, whether it's telling them off or inspiring them, whatever it is. Like Tony Astle told me off. That was, at the time, bloody horrible, but a good thing when you look back on it.
So that's an example of one amazing thing that came out of MasterChef. But yeah, how was the overall experience? So it started in 2010, so you would have been in your mid-40s at the time. And this is when free-to-air TV was a massive thing in New Zealand. Like, the ratings on this show were phenomenal. What's it like being sort of, you know, entering middle age and becoming like a household name? Did you cope okay with the fame and the recognition?
Well, you don't have a choice, really. I mean, you know, you start and you don't think you'll become well-known, but then, you know, you do. And people are like, come up to you and chat to you like they know you, and you sort of think, do I know them? And then they'll walk off, and then they'll suddenly remember how they know you. They don't actually know you. They know you from television. They'll come around and go, oh, sorry, I realise who you are now. And, you know, that sort of grew and grew, and, you know, lots of signing. And, you know, now it's sort of dropped off a bit, really, which has been good because I kind of wanted that. Like, I've hidden away for the last, I don't know how many years, really, since Hazel came along, because I want to be a dad and I didn't need that limelight. I remember my ex-wife hated that whole limelight thing, you know. I mean, whenever we'd go somewhere, you know, somebody would come up and want to talk to me, and I'd go, well, this is my wife, and introduce her, and then normally just hand her the phone and say, could you take a photo of us? And that went down like a cup of cold sick. And I remember one night it really didn't work out very well because the limit had been hit. So, you know, with Hazel, like my daughter, I don't want her, you know, it's bad enough even now, but she's now growing up a bit, and, you know, I'm starting to do podcasts again and looking at, you know, another run, you know, to just tee things off is my plan.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you in here. Geez, we've been going for 50 minutes. We haven't even talked about, you know, the out of the kitchen stuff, really. Yeah, so you just mentioned your ex-wife. So you've only been married the one time?
Yep.
So that's Hazel's mum.
Yep.
And if my facts are correct, she used to be a customer at Euro. You'd see her, you quite liked her, you gave her free puddings.
That's true, I did. Yeah, I tried very hard to schmooze her. Yes. I did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something you and I have got in common. We've both had an unsuccessful marriage. Yeah, how do you reflect on that? It fucking sucks, eh?
It sucks, and at the time it really sucks. I mean, when it all sort of falls apart around you, and, you know, and people don't realise that haven't been through it. People that have been through it get it, and they're supportive and understanding. And those that haven't, oh, we can be friends with you and your ex-wife. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, the dynamics are hard.
Know.
And no one goes into these things thinking it's going to fail.
Yeah.
You know, you go into it and it's till death do us part. So anything less than that feels like a fail.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely failed in that regard. And
did you? How so?
Well, you know,
prioritising work.
My eyes got the better of me.
Oh, okay.
And, you know,
it's a big admission.
Yeah, my eyes got the better of me, and we had a lot of great times, don't get me wrong. But I think, you know, I was a celebrity, and girls like celebrities. But then they realised that, actually, you're just a normal bloke underneath it all, and I think that's probably where it went down the track. But, you know, Hazel has got an awesome mum, and, you know, I have absolutely no regrets. And, you know, that's how it ends up.
Were you unfaithful or just a big flirt?
No, I don't think I was a big flirt I definitely wasn't unfaithful. No.
Yeah, it's tough. These things are complicated. Life's complicated. Eh? I find as I get older, you realise there's less black and white and way more grey than what anyone thinks. It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough, but there's a lot of people that go through it, and what needs to, when there's children involved, you've got to be diplomatic and really good at it, right? So, and the interesting thing is, now Hazel's grown up, she has no recollection of ever her mum and dad being together. So it's just normal to go from one house, so she spends a week with her mum and a week with me. And, she's got the best of both worlds. She's got a great mum and she's got a great dad, and you get two lots of everything, right? So she's probably a little too spoilt, but there you go.
And how's your relationship with the ex these days?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
So long as I kill with kindness.
Well, you learn what it takes. Yeah. So Hazel, you became a dad at about 50. She's now intermediate age. Do you get roped into lots of school things? Because of your celebrity status? I'm not doing like just being a dad on a school camp as a,
Occasionally, yeah. I've been in to talk about, on their careers day, talk about what it's like to be in a restaurant. So, that's sort of about it. There's been talk of me going in to do some cooking classes in this school that she's got, when they've got this kitchen that's better than any kitchen I've ever worked in, so I probably should go and do it at some stage and have a bit of fun with them.
What does your day look like with her now when she's with you? Are you there for the school drop-off in the morning? You're there for breakfast and there in the afternoon again?
Yep. Yeah. I'm up in the morning and we're getting ready for school drop-off, and then pick up and everything else that comes along with it, gymnastics classes and all those sort of things, which is great. I love it. I absolutely just love it. And I think I mentioned earlier, she said to me that she'd like to learn how to fly a glider. I don't know whether she's told her mum that yet, but that's pretty exciting. And a lot of people go, 12's way too young, but we'll just get her up in the air and see. I've taken her power flying, and first time I took her, I said, we'll go and fly over your mum's house, and we're going around and around and around, and she couldn't see her mum, who was standing out in the middle of the road, and finally she saw her, and I thought, right, we've gone around and around a lot here, and we went off, and then she said, Dad, can we do a roll? So I did a roll, and then I looked at her and she was white. And I thought, I need to get this thing on the ground in a big hurry. My dad had said to me, whatever you do, don't do any aerobatics on the first flight with her, and I didn't listen to that. But we've since been flying, and she's an ace now. Loosens off a strap, flies it round, loves going upside down.
Yeah, so your dad, Brian Gault.
Yeah.
That's where the love of flying come from, which seems like it's going to be passed down to another generation. And you lost your dad in June last year.
Yep.
2024. So who was Brian Gault?
He was the most awesome dad in the world, and I was lucky that what he did for a living ended up being my passion. And when I wanted to learn how to fly, I remember him saying, and I guess I'm sort of deviating onto the flying thing, but he said, if you want to learn how to fly, get yourself out to the gliding club and learn how to fly a glider, and that will make you a better pilot. And he had really nothing to do with my flying and was not really interested. It was kind of like, do it on your own. And eventually, once I became a glider pilot, he came out and started getting involved. And then eventually I said to him, Dad, you're really good at this. How about you teach me how to fly powered airplanes, which he did. And then he sent me solo in a Harvard, which is an ex-Air Force Harvard, 49 years after he'd flown it in the Air Force, in the same Harvard. And that was a pretty cool dad-son experience to do. And then with my love of flying, I bought an aeroplane called a Mustang with 3 other guys and brought it to New Zealand, and super high performance, fastest piston engine aeroplane in New Zealand, like a real weapon. And that's when I said to Dad, could you test fly it for us, which he did, and then he taught us all how to fly it. And then eventually, so he did all the air shows in it originally, going around and displaying it at, Wanaka Air Show and all the big air shows. And then he taught me how to do that. But those trips away together, flying and poor weather conditions, great weather conditions, it was just the ultimate father-son thing to do. And I'm so grateful for him. And, you know, he worked in the import business that we started to supply my restaurants. He ran that after he retired. He worked until the day he had a stroke, actually. And, yeah, the most incredible father, supportive, so grateful.
Yeah, I've got a photo here. I don't know what the plane is in the background, but it's a photo of you and him.
That's the Harvard that he sent me solo in, Yeah,
it seems like it was a really special relationship. And ultimately it was motor neuron disease that got him. What does that look like in real terms? What is motor neuron disease?
Horrendous. Yeah, horrendous.
Is that where your body just stops?
Yeah, everything stops working. So in the end, unfortunately, you know, he was bedridden and couldn't do it. But, you know, my dad being his dad, when he found out that he had motor neuron disease and heard the outcome, because eventually, you know, you can't swallow, you can do nothing. It's a horrendous way to die. And he took advantage of the assisted death, and that takes some balls, right? And so he was straight on to that, and yeah, that was, and you know, thank you to our leader David Seymour, not leader, but you know, who brought that in, because you know, that would have been, it was bad enough to watch what it was. And I remember when Dad said, you know, it was scheduled for 6 weeks away and things started to decline, he just looked at me and said, make the call.
So how did that look? The reason I asked this, I had a lady on the podcast last year called Tracy Hickman, and we did the podcast. She chose to go the same way. She had
I heard it. He just did it on the beach, right?
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, went to the beach, had a Bluetooth speaker, had some friends there, and everything went exactly the way that she planned it, which is perfect because she was a planner. How was it for your dad? So I just sort of imagined that when someone did this, it was going to be in like a cold sort of doctor's surgery or something.
No, it was a hospice in Manurewa, and they do the work of angels. They are incredible, hence I try and help them with fundraising where I can. The people there were just angels, that's the only way you can say it. They were incredible. We were all around him. The night before, I went and got a bottle of wine, put a straw in the glass, and
is that when your sister was there, she was singing Ave Maria? Is that a different occasion?
That's the silence where you get me, right?
I think that's good, though. It shows the impact. Yeah. Fuck, he must have been so proud of you.
Well, he was an amazing singer. He actually did a record and he sang opera and was, you know, he was a great golfer. Both, you know, he played off, you know, I think he was a one handicap, one or two. His brother was a great golfer who became captain of St Andrews. He loved golf and he was a great singer. And my sister ended up singing as well, and she's a great singer. So yes, there was that song sung, and it's pretty hard to talk about.
Well, it's still quite recent. It's like a year and a bit.
Yeah.
But you kind of hope it's always hard to talk about, I guess, because it means he's still there.
Yeah, it'll always be hard to talk about it, and it'll always get me probably.
When do you miss him most?
Oh, all the time. Like, you know, I often think about him, and you know, life has a limit. We're all going to die, right? So you just got to get on with it. But I've got so many incredible memories and stories, and you know, just good things that are. You know, he wouldn't want me sitting here bloody crying. He'd want me, you know, he would hate me talking about him, you know. He's the most humble guy. I've had so many people who he taught how to fly the 747-400 for Air New Zealand. He was a training captain, and he said, what your old man didn't know about flying those things wasn't worth knowing. And, I think I had a legend of a father in the aviation industry, super highly respected. And, they were a team, my mum and him, I've got an incredible mother who tells me everything every day, and she's normally bloody right.
Yeah. Is she still around, or is she?
She's still around kicking, and she tells me she's past her use-by date, but she's, both my sister and I, and even Hazel is the granddaughter of, we've been very lucky, and that's why family is so important to me. We're a very tight-knit family. And, that's what family's about, sitting at a dinner table, breaking bread and being on one another's side even when you've done something wrong,
Yeah. Were your mum and dad married till the end?
Yep.
Yeah. 66 years?
They were together about right. Yeah, they were
incredible.
Together a long time. Yeah.
How's she coping?
She's done pretty well. I think, she was a full-time carer in the end, so when suddenly that role disappears, it's pretty hard. Unfortunately, my mum has a disorder called neuropathy, which is where your legs suddenly don't work and things. So she's got a little tough road ahead of her at the moment, but she's driving and still telling me what I should and shouldn't do, so things are good.
Is she right?
That's the goddamn problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is it's wonderful though, like losing your first parent at the age of 60.
Yeah,
like it's how things are supposed to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. It's not easy.
Yeah. Well, my dad was 90, right?
Yeah.
And he was flying airplanes until he was 79 at air shows. I remember he'd taxi in and the crowd line would be there, and all the crowd would go up to see the airplane, and he'd pull his helmet off, and everybody go, "Oh my God, he's a freaking granddad! Look at how old he is!" And he'd just been flying past at 350 knots, pulling up and doing loops and rolls and things,
And where's your knife with his wings on?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, wow. So, I said to Dad before he passed away that I wanted something special that could go in the handle of a knife, and he gave me his Air Force wings. And Auckland guy called Willie and his wife Angela make these beautiful knives called Kiwi blade knives. And so they did this project, so the handle is in the same colour as his Air Force uniform, and the wings are in the handle. So it's an everyday knife that will last for centuries, that one day I'll hand down to my daughter. So, we have all these things that we get from our grandparents or parents that just end up in a drawer, might be cufflinks or Air Force wings or whatever it is, and they disappear and you never look at them. And I just wanted, Is
it something you think about? You think about him when you use that knife?
Yeah, every time I look at the wings, I think, wow, that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, you never got to see it. But,
what does your mum think of it?
Beautiful was her words. I mean,
yeah,
everybody who sees it goes, wow, what a cool idea. And, I use it every day. It's not one of those knives that you bring out for show. It's an everyday knife, and I call it my wingman, So
that's cool. Thank you. I know this stuff's not easy to share, but I do appreciate you sharing it today.
Pleasure.
It's really cool.
Yeah, well, it cements it all back, isn't it? You care, and I've had a very lucky life. A lot of amazing opportunities have come my way, and I'm grateful for all of it. But it ain't over yet, right? Fat lady hasn't sung.
No way. You're in great shape. I said this when you arrived. I said, shit, you're looking good. And you accused me of making a fat joke. I can't remember exactly what you said, but yeah. Let's talk about the health for a little bit. So am I right in saying your mum was diabetic as well?
No, but it ran in the family.
Okay.
Diabetes. And, I progressively got bigger and bigger.
Just as a result of your lifestyle and job?
Yeah, just, grazing all day, tasting food all day in the restaurants and then getting home late at night, probably had a couple too many drinks, opening the fridge door and going, better eat something. Never really sitting down often for a meal and then getting up and doing it all again. And, it wasn't, she said, you need to be careful, you need to lose some weight, because diabetes runs in the family. And, of course, I just ignored it until one day I'd done some blood tests for an insurance thing I wanted to get, and they said, we can't insure you because you've got type 2 diabetes. You better go and see your doctor. Well, no, they didn't say type 2 diabetes. They said you've got high blood glucose levels. So I went along to the doctor, sure enough, and then they start prescribing you medication, but I was still into the restaurants and... I pretty much ignored it because they give you these tablets, right, to take. And, did MasterChef, and embarrassed to talk about it because you eat your way to diabetes, yet it is genetic and you're predisposed to it. But, and type 1 diabetes is very different, right? So that's completely different thing to type 2 diabetes. So, basically I was overweight, unfit, and had eaten my way to type 2 diabetes. So I was highly embarrassed about that. So I didn't tell anybody. My family knew, but, nobody, it wasn't something I wanted to talk about.
In hindsight, should you have been embarrassed about it?
In hindsight, no, because I guess I'm talking about it right now, aren't I? And it wasn't until I actually changed doctors to a guy, Tom Dew, who I went all through school with, who was a doctor, and he said, you know what, you should change and come to me as a doctor. And he said, and when you make your first booking, do it just right before lunch. So I thought, we're planning on going out for a lunch, right? So, sure enough, I booked this doctor's appointment, and I'll never forget being in the surgery, and Hazel was almost 1. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, do you want to walk down the aisle with your daughter? And he said, you know what? Because the rate you're going, you're not going to. He said, you're on the maximum dose of metformin for this type 2 diabetes. You'll probably eventually go blind. You probably might even get a foot chopped off or a leg as it progresses. You won't die of diabetes, but you'll die of a related effect from the type 2 diabetes. And, you probably end up having to go to the hospital, go on a dialysis machine, multiple times a week. At which stage I sort of said, I guess lunch is off. So I went,
scared straight.
Yeah, I hopped in the car and I was absolutely shell-shocked, and it was exactly what I need to be told, It was, he had some pretty stiff words as I walked out the door. It was like something along the lines of pull your fucking finger out. So I went home and I Googled reverse diabetes. Reverse diabetes. There's got to be some silver bullet out here. So then I found this place in Nevada that said they could reverse diabetes. So I thought I'd better do a bit of research on this. So found some YouTube clips, and it just looked like a bunch of hippies sitting around smoking a bunch of joints. I thought, well, maybe that's not the place to go. So then I continued looking, and then I found this place in the UK that believed they could help with type 2 diabetes, and I found a YouTube clip of a guy who kind of looked just a bit like me, who was singing its praises and said it got him off all the medication. So I rang them and said, hey, I'm in New Zealand, I'd like to come up. They said, we don't really deal with that anymore because you've got to have a nurse and all this sort of things, and doctors. And I said, well, what would it take for you to do it? So they came back to me and said, so long as I paid the extra. And back then I was like MasterChef. It was, I just finished the 5th season. So, I could afford it. And they said to me, you need to come for minimum 4 weeks, but if we need you for 8 weeks, you'll have to stay 8 weeks. I'd never taken 8 weeks off in my life, 8 weeks. And anyway, with some discussion with my ex at the time, it was decided that I should do it. So I went there, and I'll never forget arriving into London, getting some friends I hadn't been seen. I had this last supper I turn up at this place the next day, and it was like checking myself into, I don't know what, because, it was this old sort of villa, sort of castle-y looking place, and it was just the only people that were there when I walked in was just people, and I felt like I was checking myself into a funny farm. And, the bed was terrible, and then next morning, I come down and it's just raw food and juices, and it take me into a room, and it's all these beautiful people. I'm the only big guy there. It's all people that are detoxing, and actresses and writers and creator, all these sort of beautiful people there who are just doing the detox. Mm. And they said to me, you're going to have a personal trainer, you're going to be doing yoga, you're going to be doing meditation. And I'm like, you're kidding me. I'd never been to a gym in my life, and yoga and meditation, what a crock of shit. I thought, this is going to be ridiculous. And you're going to be doing these saunas, and you're going to be doing all the stuff, and then we're going to be in the lounge each night, and we're going to teach you about fats and superfoods, and it's going to be all raw food. I'm like, awesome. Here I am.
The version of hell for a chef.
Yeah, and I remember the first day when I ran on a running machine, and you won't cope with this at all. I couldn't even run 2 minutes. I went to the first yoga, and I'm down the back of the class, and let me tell you, Dom, the view was really good from the back of the class, so I was starting to think this isn't so bad. And about, a fair way into the classes, the trainer was going, imagine you're floating. And I'm like, oh my God, what a load of crap. Anyway, I persevered with it. And the long story short is that at the end of it, I was running good on that running machine. And this guy is going, you're doing it for your daughter. I had tears running down my face. And, at the end of it, I was off all the medication. I lost a lot of weight just in the 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, they said, you're done. You've done great. And then because I'd taken the 8 weeks off, I met Hazel and my ex-wife in Los Angeles, and I just went on a mission to learn more about superfoods, fats, and learn all about this. And LA is just the greatest place on the planet for, all these juice bars and things. And it changed my life, I was far more aware of food. I was never eating bad food. I wasn't a McDonald's guy, or, occasionally I'd have a Georgie pie on the way home. But, I wasn't I didn't eat bad food. I was just eating at the wrong time. So I'd learned all about fasting. I learned about microbiome, our gut health, and, how it affects us, communicating via neurons to our small brain, and nutrition, learn all this stuff. Came back to New Zealand and put a healthy menu on at Euro, made the big mistake of telling everybody it was healthy, so nobody wanted to come, and dumb mistake. And all I did was actually go, right, let's be conscious of the carbs with everything and the fats that I was using. Not that I was ever using bad fats, but, I was tailoring it to something that I thought everybody would love. And that was a huge mistake, so I had to quickly reverse and put another menu on. And then, they asked me, because I'd lost a bunch of weight at this time, I was asked if I would actually get back a step, because whilst I was there, I remember they asked me to do a list of all my, things that were most important to me. So obviously family was at top, and then there was work and all these things. And I remember this woman saying to me, do you know what I'd like you to do now? I'd like you to do a pie chart of how much time you spent on everything. So then it was this pie chart, and it was just all this work and very little for anything else. And then she said to me, do you know, is there a reason why you haven't put health on there or exercise? Mm-hmm. I haven't put any of that on there. It never occurred to me. Most people listening to this will go, you're serious, but it had never occurred to me. So that was a big eye-opener. And then we talked about, the MasterChef thing and how I was eating all this cold food. Not that the cold food is a problem, but I was just eat. Again, when you start, you've got so much food to taste. Is this really good for you? And that's when I decided that actually MasterChef was not good for me. And I came back and, quit. Never been on TVNZ since. So it went down like probably a cup of cold sick. I don't know. Maybe they were ready to move on. Who knows? But so then I was asked if I would do a documentary called Why Are We Fat and be the host on it. So I was quite excited about that because it was going to be this opportunity to travel around the world and meet the world's experts on all different facets of the science behind losing weight. We all know diets don't work. They work in the short term, everybody puts more weight on. Diets do not work. Science works. So I was really excited because I'd started this journey about, superfoods, fats and, fibre and what your gut likes and doesn't like and all of that sort of thing. So I was on this mission like, I'll do this. I remember the first day I turned up to this doctor's surgery for the first filming and they said, could you just take your shirt off and get into your undies? And I'm like, hey, I'm the host. Nope. I was the guinea pig and the host who would interview people. And that was...
It's confrontational.
Yeah, it was pretty confrontational. And, I'm like, well, I guess everybody's going to know I got diabetes or had diabetes, right? Like, it's, I'm going with it. So, and I've never looked back,
What was that like going public with it? Was there an outpouring of support at the time? Or?
Nah, I don't think anybody cared. I think it was me that was more worried about it. I think I'd built it up to, I look back at photos of me now and go, shit, I really was grossly overweight. I was gross. I mean, I'm 32 kilos lighter than what I was then.
Wow.
That's a lot of weight, right?
So much weight. You must feel so much better. That's so much less weight to be carrying around.
Yeah. And, unlike you who runs every day, I've never loved that. It's never been me, and that's why I've really enjoyed helping people now get better sleep. I mean, sleep is massive. We don't teach people how to sleep at school. We should be. It's so important for us. And there are so many ways that we can help with sleep. I'm so strict with my daughter about, when she stops using her phone at night and not having the phone in the room and reduce those blue lights and all the little things we can do. Because when we go to sleep, we're slowly filling this gas tank up in our frontal cortex. And if we don't get a good night's sleep, we wake up in the morning and the gas tank's only half full, and then we're on our way home going, I just don't want to talk to anybody else anymore. I'm like, I'm tired, I'm done. Yeah, I'll just get takeaways, or I'll open that jar of crap sauce and pour it over some pasta and, So it was an incredible experience doing the whole program and what I learned, and then we did another one called How We Eat. So we went to Turkey and Greece and looked at the whole Mediterranean diet. We hear about the Mediterranean diet, right? How good it is. But when you actually hear the real truth about it, 30% less cancer than we get in New Zealand, 50% less heart disease, 1/9 the amount of diabetes. They live to be older. They're having fun when they're older. They're drinking and partying when they're older, whereas we're all slowing down and our joints don't work and all that sort of thing. The Mediterranean diet's the way to go. So we were going into universities and going to slow cities where they just had all the things that weren't highly processed and refined. That's why you hear a lot of people go, when I eat good pasta, I don't feel bloated. Our flour here is so refined, and kids, you've started me in here, Dom, but
I love the passion.
We send our kids to school with white bread sandwiches. There's 1 gram of fibre in a slice of white bread. There is no nutrition. It's rubbish. We send them to school with a little red packet of raisins. May as well fill it up with sugar. Why not put some goji berries in there? Use a sourdough bread. Let's start feeding our kids better. We're the second most obese nation in the world, and our kids are the second most obese kids in the world. So we're going to start looking at what we eat, and I'm so passionate about that now and trying to help people, and I piss some people off with what I say. That's why I've just started this podcast with Kate would call it the Fork. Can I get that plug in for
Absolutely,
my podcast?
plug it.
You know, Forking Good podcast, where we're talking about waste and, you know, expiry dates on food and best before dates and educating on that. And my mission is to get people cooking again. I don't need to be in a restaurant making this beautiful, prissy plate of food. I've been there, done that. I just want us cooking food. And, you know, using olive oil to cook. The old science told us, oh, no, don't use olive oil, use avocado and coconut. You know, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, is so good for us to use for our cooking, drizzled on everything. The average Kiwi consumes about 200 mils of extra virgin olive oil a year. In the Mediterranean, where I just told you all the stats, how much healthier they are, the average person's consuming about 25 litres.
Wow.
It's massive. The tomatoes that they consume versus what we do here, you know, we're about 8 kilos a year. Over there, they're 40-something kilos, and it's the lycopene in tomatoes that helps fight cancer. You know, we need to be cooking with more spices, ginger, turmeric and garlic, you know, top things that help fight cancer. So I'm passionate about that.
Well, I can take or leave tomatoes here, but in Croatia a few years ago, I had some tomatoes and they were real flavoursome.
Yeah.
Like you put them in your mouth and bite into them and they just, like a taste bud explosion.
Because they ripened on the vine as opposed to the supermarkets here are buying something that is nowhere near ripe, so it'll last forever on the shelf. And they've got very little flavour. We all know when somebody's growing tomatoes and they ripen on the vine, they're just sweet and delicious, right? So,
okay. So when you went to the UK, which seems like it was a circuit breaker and like a game changer in terms of your life, so at that point you had a lot of money, but you had very little time. Why did you go there and not look at, you know, just getting some elective surgery?
I went for the appointment to the guy, and before I changed doctors, my last doctor kept telling me you need to lose weight. And he gave me a formula to start drinking, and I went home and looked at all the ingredients on that. And this is before I really got into this. I'm going to change my life, and I looked at I'm not drinking that. And then he suggested that I get some surgery, and I went along there. And the guy said to me, you know, do you really want to do this? You're a chef. And once you get this done, food will never be the same for you. And it was at around that time that Dr. Tom Do, my old school buddy, said, come and see me. And that's when, you know, when he really read me the riot act. And I guess more doctors should, but because we were mates, he could do it. He could say really what he think, and I listened, and it got my attention. So it was a game changer. What was the question? I might have deviated there.
Why didn't you just go the easy way and go for? I don't know if it's the easy way. That maybe that's harsh on people that have done it, but yeah, I mean, you had the money and you had very little time. Why didn't you just get surgery?
Because of that exact thing, you know, the doctor saying to me that it will really affect your career with food if you do this, because you won't be able to eat much. And basically they tie your stomach up, make it a quarter of the size, and you can't put as much in. And I love food. You know, life's too short for twigs and berries. You know, we've got to, you know, the food's my life. I love it. You know, wherever I go away, the next plan is where we're going for dinner. You know, that is my life. I love it.
You are so passionate about it, eh? Yeah. Your eyes light up when you talk about food and the dining experience. Did Mike Hosking make a fat joke about you on stage at an event?
He did. He did. Yeah. And I've got to thank him for it. Actually,
what did he say?
I won. It was the Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs Winners, and I won a category. And he basically introduced me as the fat chef. And, you know, I didn't like it much at the time, but it resonated with me. It was like my doctor saying it. You know, he said it in front of hundreds of people. Everybody laughed. And I was the fat guy. I was. So he wasn't telling a lie. And, I'd thank him for it if ever I saw him. You know, it was a good call. It kind of made me go, that's how people are seeing me. Because you look in the mirror, but, you know, it's not until you've lost weight that you look back at photos and go, wow, that's a big difference.
What does it mean now for day-to-day living with diabetes? Like, have you are you on medication, or have you reversed it?
I take some medication for my heart and things like that, but I eat in an 8-hour window, and 16 hours. So I fast, time restricted eating. So I've had nothing to eat today. Here, what's the time now? I've got no clue.
Oh my God, it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, but
really?
I'm not missing it at all. I'm used to it. So I eat in an 8-hour window maximum. Sometimes, I say to everybody, 80% of the time we should be really good, and 20% of the time we can be as naughty as all hell, right? But just because I eat in an 8-hour window doesn't mean I eat twigs and berries, right? I might have a nice omelette for my first meal of the day, but it might be at 2 in the afternoon, perhaps, So that's kind of my secret weapon, and because I'm still educating and helping people with this, it's always top of mind for me, and I'm always researching, looking for the new science that's out there, and, even starting to learn more about mental health. And, if somebody sleeps poorly, they remember more of the negative stuff than they do of the positive and the impartial stuff from a conversation. All this culminates, right? Sugary drinks culminate in depression and all of these things. White bread is the devil. I'm not a greenie. I'm not. And I'm not a twigs and berries guy. I'm not vegan. I'm not vegetarian. Everything within balance, right? And I like it, and I'm learning more about it.
How's your mental health been?
Good, I think.
Yeah.
Good, I think. I mean, I'm going through a pretty interesting time with business at the moment. It's tough. I mean, my core business supplied restaurants, and everybody said to me when COVID hit, aren't you glad you didn't have a restaurant? And I said, well, try having a business that supplies them. So it's been incredibly tough. So, we're probably 50% down from COVID. So hence why now, I have a deli, and we now supply people nationally. They can go onto my website, gaultsdeli.co.nz, and we deliver it to their door. And, I'm the guy who's finding the secret weapons for your pantry that make things taste great with a little drizzle of, or a shake of, or, that sort of thing, and doing the cooking classes. So, yeah, how's my mental health? I think I'm okay. I think because I'm sort of reading about it all the time, you start checking yourself. I should probably come running with you. That's probably the thing I'm missing. But I wouldn't be able to keep up.
Yeah.
So you're safe.
Oh, no. I'd slow down for you. You gave me a copy of your book, No Half Measures, which came out in 2019. You can still buy it online now?
I can buy it on my website, gaultsdeli.co.nz,
Yeah, there's a quote in there that I really like. People see my name on products in the supermarket and they think I'm a multi-millionaire. If only they knew. Fail fast, fix fast. Yeah. That's sort of like your mantra, eh? What does that mean to you? Fail fast, fix fast.
Well, you've got to see when it's not working and fix it. And too often we keep going back to the battle with the same guns, and we keep losing the battle. So we've got to go with new guns. And, I remember I did a ketchup that had no added refined sugar to it. Kids loved it. It was just like, your Heinz sort of Watties type ketchup without all the rubbish in it. Everybody loved it. Got it into the supermarket, spent a fortune developing it and getting it there, and it was a dismal failure because unfortunately it costs more. And unfortunately, a lot of healthy things do cost more. And it was like, do we just keep pushing this, or do we go, didn't work, done, back the truck up, move on? What's the next thing we can try and do?
What's been your biggest business win?
Biggest business win?
Yeah.
As in winning awards, or?
No, as in successes. You're very open talking about your fails, but there have been like a lot more wins than fails, at least from an outsider's perspective.
It was a pretty good feeling when we got Euro into the top 50 in Condé Nast magazine. I was pretty excited about that. I think Euro was a great success. I started Juvois Steakhouse with the guys that I was in business with in Auckland and Queenstown. I love Jervois Steakhouse.
It's still going. It's iconic.
Yeah. I don't know what it's like. I haven't been back. I should go back and have a look, but I haven't been there over 10 years. But
why don't you go back? Is it like an ex-girlfriend sort of thing?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you've sort of been there, done that, and they might make it better than what you had it, so that would just annoy me. No, it wouldn't. Yeah. I'd be happy. But no, I don't know. It's like been there, done that. It's like trying to reheat a souffle. They don't rise.
Is it odd for you when you go into a restaurant, like a restaurant that you've either had an association with, or even a restaurant that you've got no association with? Like, do you notice everyone sort of like sits up straight? Do you know what I mean? Or they're sort of on edge because it's Simon Gault.
You do get a bit of that, but I don't go into a restaurant to be that critical guy. I'm not, I go to a restaurant to enjoy it, and just like everybody else does. And I'm probably way more forgiving than anybody else if something doesn't go right, because I know what it's like on the other side.
You got a bit of compassion. You're not the MasterChef judge.
Yeah, occasionally if I see a waiter or waitress or somebody that's serving something from behind the counter and they're doing a disservice to the owner, I won't be shy to say something because the owner's not there to see it, and
you know what it's like.
I feel like I owe it to the whoever does own it, I don't know, is to actually say something. So I might be a little harsh sometimes then, but I'm trying to support restaurants. I've started doing what I call road hooking in the mini videos for Instagram of a restaurant I go to, and if it's not good, I don't even ever edit it and put it in. They're very amateurish, but the last one I did had over 80,000 views. And
I saw one on social media this morning, a restaurant on Richmond Road.
Yeah. They got 1,000 new subscribers in a weekend to their Instagram page. So if I can help in little ways like that, I love to do it. To show people there's some great things that we have in New Zealand.
What about your biggest or most painful failure? Is that the stock cap thing?
The stocks, yeah. So we launched a concentrate stock, and we were very excited because when I was on MasterChef, and I'm going to have to be careful with this, they were sponsored by Campbell's, and I never rated it, and I can't speak on behalf of other judges, but I didn't rate it. And I thought, wonder if I could make a stock that's better than that. So we came up with a stock concentrate that comes in a pouch, and you take it home and you just squeeze it into hot water, and you can drink it like soup. No numbers, no preservatives. And once it's open, you can put it in the fridge for months. It'll last and last and last because it's real. Whereas your other stocks, liquid stocks, you'll have to throw away after 3 days. So we were launching that 2 days before we launched, we had a cap failure. So the entire lot, and this was going into every countdown in New Zealand. So we had to throw the whole lot away and start again. So that was a horrendous cost. And
like what if you had to put a figure on it?
Couple of $100,000.
Oh.
Yeah, and of course the cap people blamed the package, the tightening of it. It was over tightened, and everybody blamed everybody, and we ended up carrying the can. So we had to pull the launch again. But we're in most supermarkets around New Zealand with our Gault's stock, which is beef, lamb, chicken and vegetable, and people who use them absolutely love them. They're price similar to the competitive stocks, but you can keep ours if you don't use it all for much longer. So the little tiny sachets make 2 litres. So biggest fail to start off with, probably one of the most proudest things that I've done that's actually in the supermarket that is fantastic. I so wish the ketchup was still there because the amount of ketchup that is consumed in New Zealand, when you think most ketchup bottles are almost 50% sugar, it was a great thing for this country, but we just couldn't make it work.
Have you started making money on the stock yet? Have you
No, not a cent. But we're still going. Well, we are today. We are today. Like a little bit more loyalty out there, please, people, if you can, please. Where do I look?
And what about the Briscoes collaboration? How does that come about? You're everywhere in Briscoes.
Yeah. So I was asked by Rod Duke if I'd like to do a range with him, and I thought this sounds cool because, you know, it's something everyday New Zealanders can afford to buy because, you know, obviously there's a lot of specials at Briscoes. Most people buy on special. And when they showed me the sort of products that they were going to do, I thought this is really great quality stuff that everybody can afford. And I've been in there for years now with Briscoes, you know, from everything from pots and pans and knives and tea towels, aprons, plates, glasses, and that's been a really fantastic collaboration with Briscoes.
How do you feel when you go into a Briscoes, iconic New Zealand store, and your name's on this whole range?
I tell you when I feel really good is when I go to a restaurant and I pick the plate up and it's one of mine because I think somebody's bought some, right? Going into the store, like Hazel was saying to me, Dad, you know, faces on everything. But some of the original packaging is still there, and she said, Dad, that's your fat face.
Oh, that's awesome. Seems like you have a really good relationship with her.
Yeah,
like real special, like good mates.
Yeah. I'm Dad.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not one of these people who has to be mates. I'm Dad there, and she's a cool kid, and she's my world. I love her to bits, and I just love seeing her grow, fall, get up. You know, she's an absolute joy to her mother and myself and grandparents.
Yeah. That's no more kids for you?
No.
Yeah.
No, I've been there, done that.
Well, you're younger than Barry Soap, eh? I think.
Yeah, you reckon? Nah,
Would you ever get married again, or no? That's done as well, or
no, that's too risky.
Yeah,
lost a lot of money on the last one. Can't afford to do that again.
I watched an interview with Russell Crowe yesterday. I think he's exactly the same age as you, 61. Yeah. And he was asked in this interview, like, will you get engaged or married? And he goes, no, me and my girlfriend, we're extremely happy. Why would we ruin it with a wedding?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was a great line. So the book's called No Half Measures. What does that mean to you personally, that saying?
It means to me that I'm not doing it half-assed. I always try and excel. I remember saying to all my team in the restaurants, you know, people pass a lot of restaurants to come to our restaurant. It's not like we're the only ones. So they're consciously driving or walking past restaurants. And if they're to come to ours, so if they go into that restaurant and they're having a perfect day and everything goes swimming well, so they get 100% peak performance out of their experience there, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? We need to find that extra 5% magic. We need to be at 105 to make people realise that it was worth coming that extra distance. And if that's just when they walk in looking up and going, hey, how are you? Doesn't matter what it is. We need to find that extra 5% magic with whatever we do. So to me, that's what no half measures are. Let's do it as well as we can, because sure enough, your competitors trying just as hard, if not harder.
I feel like that is has a bit like the impression I've got from this podcast. That's how you've lived your life. It's like your guiding star, like just doing everything to the absolute best of your ability.
Try to. My problem is I say yes too much. Everybody tells me I need to start saying no to everything. But I love the challenge of things. I really enjoy the challenge, and don't like it when I don't do as well as I'd like to. But
what would you say are your best and worst habits?
Oh, best and worst habits.
I had Sir Steve Hansen on the podcast a few months ago, and he's got a theory that for most people, their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. So I wonder if you, like, one of your best and worst habits is saying yes to everything.
I think that would be. I mean, I've got something coming up this weekend where it was a charity thing. What I do this cooking thing with dads and their child, son or daughter. And I thought, that's a cool thing. And so then I quickly wrote down a menu and sent it off to them, and now I'm thinking, shit, I've got to work all the recipes out and get it all organised. So, it's a charity again. It's another thing I do for nothing. But, I say yes way too easily and then end up stressing out or carrying the consequence to deliver on it. And, of course, I want to deliver well on it, so I'll go all out.
What are you most afraid of?
Ooh, what am I most afraid of? Not having enough money to relax when I'm a bit older.
Are you on track? You're not going to stop working, eh? What are your thoughts on retirement?
I love working, but I love travelling, and I hate to go bust. And you're hearing this all the time now, right? With restaurants and different business, it's tough, and I'm not immune to it. So at the moment, it's stressful, and that would be the thing I'm most afraid of, is going bust. So it's not about how much money. It's just need to be comfortable and not go bust. So I'm working hard on all of those things at the moment.
4 more years until the pension. God, that's not going to go far though, is it? A few $100 a week.
No.
You'll keep working until the day you drop.
I think so. I mean, I like projects. I love projects, and I'd love, people say to me, will we do another restaurant? And I say never. If some young person came up and I thought, this is the right person to back in a restaurant where they're running it, but I'm just a support role, I'd like to do that. Maybe if the right person came up, you never know. My daughter might say, I want to do a restaurant. Hopefully not, actually, but...
So you're okay with her gliding?
I'm okay with the flying, but I don't want her to have a restaurant life, because it's a killer. It's antisocial, it's hard work, and not a big enough return.
Well, that's good. As a parent, you've got to have your boundaries. Yeah. What about regrets?
Regrets? There is a couple. I remember Kevin Roberts had said to me, want to help you into a restaurant in New York? And I said no. And also Simon Fuller was keen to do a restaurant in London. And I said no, because it was the Kiwi in me wanting to come home. But I would have loved to have done either of those to go, I did that.
For a guy whose worst habit is saying yes to things, you cocked those ones up, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the two that... Because I do love New Zealand. New Zealand is home, and I love it. And both of those sort of offers were at a time that I hadn't been here for a while, so...
So after everything you've been through, the restaurants, the products, the fame, the failures, what is it that you're still hungry for?
More time to go gliding and flying, probably.
Yeah, what is it about gliding? I'm intrigued about gliding. The only person I know, and I don't even know him, that glides is Richie McCaw.
Yeah, Richie's a very good glider pilot, or sail planes. So most people think a glider just goes up and flutters down, right? But the actual reality of it is they're heavy, high-performance machines that can go massive distances. So there's a great Kiwi soaring glider pilot called Terry Delore. They call him the master of the wave. Very good friend of mine, and flies a lot with Richie McCaw too. And he took off in Omarama in the morning and flew to the bottom of the South Island, and that evening landed in Drury in South Auckland in a glider. I mean, that's the entire length of the South Island, and almost up, to Auckland, Drury, landed there, and then had a few days, and then flew to Cape Reinga and back in a glider. They can go phenomenal distance, and from a competition point of view, once you get skilled enough, they have these fantastic competitions. How fast can you fly around the course? And invariably, they're faster than you could do it in a little 172 Cessna. They're fast, high performance. They're beautiful to look at. They're just sleek, graceful machines. It's like strapping a pair of overalls on and going flying. You can be in a thermal and look out and see a hawk flying, and his head is turning like this, looking at you. And if you're in a thermal that a hawk's in, you know you're in the best lift. And all of a sudden the hawk will go, oh, he's a bit bigger than me. He flaps his wings and flies off. But, flying in the mountains in the South Island, around the face of Mount Cook, you see scenery that nobody else sees. It is you against the elements. And, there are all sorts of sources of lift. You don't just go up and soar off. So there are thermals, right? So you see a little white puffy cloud, there's generally a column of rising air under that. So the sun heats the ground, and if you're bare feet and you're running across an asphalt road, it's hot on your feet. Then over the grass, it's not as hot. So the air over that asphalt road is warmer, so it rises. And as it rises, it condenses and forms a little white puffy cloud. So under that white puffy cloud, there's a column of rising air. So if you fly under that in your glider and then circle, you go up in the lift. And then you go off to the next one. Then there's ridge lift. So you've got a big hill, and like something like the Kaimai Ranges or the Alps in the South Island, and there's a westerly blowing and the wind hits the hill. Well, it can't go into the ground, it's got to go up. So if you fly along the face of that lift, the face of that hill, you're in rising air. So you can go phenomenal speed. You can be going like 180 kilometres an hour in this rising air and cover huge distances. And then there's wave lift, which you see in the South Island with these beautiful lenticular clouds. So the wind hits the hill, and when it's a big hill like in the South Island, the Alps, hits the hill, rises up, and then it gets cold and it falls down again, hits the ground, and then it bounces even higher the next time. And that's when you can fly to incredible altitudes, higher than a jet airliner. You're on oxygen up there. So there's all these different forms of lift, and that is such a challenge as a pilot to be up there, you against the elements. No engine, just you flying against the elements. How fast can you go? How far can you go? It is just the most incredible sport that you could do.
Shit, you love it, don't you? What's it like up there? Pardon my ignorance. Is it everyone imagines it's super still, but is it noisy
quiet.
with the wind?
Everybody thinks it's quiet, but it's actually reasonably noisy because you're going fast.
Makes sense.
You're in this very sleek machine, so you don't want any tiny cracks or anything letting air in. Otherwise, it will be really noisy and causes drag. So you're in this like capsule. So, but it is relatively noisy. It's not quiet.
And can your mind wander, or are you fully engaged and?
Your mind can wander when you're set up in a lift and just going up, but no, that's what I love about it. It's completely different to everything else you do. You strap into that glider, you go flying, and that's what you're doing until you're back on the ground and at the bar telling everybody how well you did or didn't do.
Sure, you've got good energy, eh? Like you really do live the no half measures lifestyle. Like everything you do, you're just so enthusiastic when you talk about it. It's really, really captivating.
Yeah, well, I probably can't talk about running like that, though.
Well, it's not something you're into. Do you think about legacy at all? Not really.
Not until you just mentioned it, really. No, I just want to be a good dad. I want to be remembered as he was a good dad. That's all I care about. Yeah,
when the time comes that you pass, say 30 years from now,
who knows? Yeah.
What 3 words would you like Hazel to use to describe you as a man and as a dad?
I love my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can tell how much you love her too.
Yeah.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've done pretty good, and I've definitely done things I'm not proud about. Don't ask me what, because I can't really remember. But nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect.
Oh no, there's a few people on the internet that are. In the comments section.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah, the keyboard warriors, I call them.
Yeah. Hey, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so pleased we made this happen. Yeah, how's it for you reflecting on some of the highs and lows?
Yeah, it's pretty good. You draw in the bits that you don't think about, to get me to talk about. So no, I've enjoyed it. It's been wonderful.
I feel like you're an old mate.
Yeah,
I suppose
likewise.
that's
Yeah, no, I've
the
enjoyed
TV
it too.
connection, but it's been
Yeah.
really enjoyable.
You'll
Simon-
have to come to my deli. Come into my deli. I've got all the secret weapons for your pantry at home, and I'll turn you into a salt snob, olive oil and balsamic snob. So come and see me in St John's.
Mate, you'd hate me. I can eat for survival. Like I could eat salmon and broccoli every night of the week.
I can make your broccoli taste better than anything. I get people who say, I don't like Brussels sprouts. I'm like, I'll get you liking Brussels sprouts.
You're a great New Zealander, and shit, you've done some stuff. Simon Gault, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.